Hi there, I'm Ray, and today I wanted to share with you the wonderful books which I received for Christmas. I was really lucky for Christmas this year. I got 8 new books, which I'm so excited about. One of the things about living somewhere where I don't really have access to a bookshop or even to online book ordering for most of the year is that I don't really feel any guilt when I do get new books, because even though I haven't actually counted how many books I have on my shelves that I haven't read, I feel like it's not a stupid number, and it's really lovely to have new books to add to the collection to kind of refresh it from time to time. And as I don't have access to that very much, getting a load of new books at Christmas was just a delight. I'm going to take you through the books in very roughly chronological order when the books were initially written. I have not checked the dates for these, so some of them might be wrong, but from when I picked them up, what it seemed like they would roughly be. So the first book that I've got is a new translation of Beowulf by Maria Headley. This is a really interesting one because in a way it's obviously really ancient. Beowulf is kind of the first epic poem written in English. It was written in Old English. It's been famously translated by Seamus Heaney. Actually, I have my beautiful copy of Beowulf translated by Seamus Heaney. Any excuse to show this, which has got the Old English on one side and the facing page translation on the other. What I'm excited to see with Maria Headley is that this is like a modern and feminist translation. So whereas Seamus Heaney tries to stick to the original very much, and what he does amazingly is to really work at portraying the kind of alliterative poetry, which is very much the style of the Old English poetry. So instead of having rhyme as the thing which ties the poem together, it's alliteration. Heaney really replicates that in his version, which is wonderful. But I think Maria Headley, whilst obviously using the original text as her basis, is not afraid to stray from that. So I think this is going to be a really different translation, and I'm really excited for it. It came out either last year or the year before, and I've been wanting to read it ever since then. I love Beowulf. I read English literature at university, and Old English, Middle English were areas that I really enjoyed, and it's something now in later life you have to kind of encourage yourself to read them. They don't kind of fall into your hands the way that more modern books do. And so I wanted to get a couple of older books to read throughout this year, because I do really love the richness and magic and fantasy and beauty of Old and Middle English literature. And it seems a shame that we don't spend very much time with it nowadays, because some of it is just wonderful, and Beowulf definitely is just what a ride. Really looking forward to seeing what a feminist translation can do with the original text. Next up, we have another one that I've been looking forward to reading ever since I first saw it. This is The Owl and the Nightingale, which is an anonymous Middle English poem, quite early Middle English, so like pre-Chaucer, I think pre the Gawain poet as well. And I also studied this at university. I can't really remember the stories. I can remember the story of Beowulf, but this is a book about an owl and a nightingale, obviously. And I think they just have a conversation, and I can't remember what they talk about. I remember that some of it is like surprisingly rude. You tend to think that anything that isn't modern is really polite, and that is definitely not the case. But this has been translated by Simon Armitage, who is a real master of translating and capturing Old and Middle English. He really loves the language, and you can feel that in his poetry. I don't think this is a facing page. No, this is not a facing page translation, but what it is really decorated. It has some gorgeous pictures and images in it. I love pictures in my book. I just think pictures always add something. And so yeah, I'm really looking forward to reading Simon Armitage's translation and just to experiencing the story again, because like I say, it's been a long time, and when I read it at university, I definitely just read one of those kind of academic translations which more word for word translates the Middle English, and you know, you're working on the language aspect of it as much as you are on the actual content, so it'll be really nice to just read it and enjoy it in a more accessible way. Okay, on to more recent stuff. The next one that I have, I'm so excited for this. This book is Emily of Deep Valley. Wait, I'm just going to turn the brightness down a bit because I feel like it's kind of a bit too bright for you to really see the books properly. Okay, I think that's a bit more visible. Sorry about that. It's a really dingy day today. It's raining, and so I've got like a light. This is the first time I've ever tried using indoor lighting that's not just overhead lighting. I've got like a ring light, which I'm very excited about. Made me feel like a professional. That was another Christmas gift. But I'm not quite there with it yet, so I think I've looked really washed out for the first part of the video. This book I'm so excited for. It's Emily of Deep Valley by Hart Lovelace. This book is for Kate Howe's Kindred Spirits book club, which is starting in 2022. This is going to be the first month's read. And she's choosing books which are particularly leaning towards like a life softening kind of read. I love Kate Howe talks a lot about this concept of life softeners in terms of literature and films and just like activities in general, which bring us that sense of coziness and warmth and joy and comfort. And one of the things that I have really discovered about myself through being on BookTube for a while is how much I love these kind of books, how much I love hearing other people talk about these kind of books, and how much they add to my enjoyment of being alive. So this is the story of a young girl called Emily, and it's the year after she graduates from high school where all of her friends have gone off to college and she has to stay at home to look after her elderly grandfather. And it's about how she initially feels like this is going to be a kind of lost year of her life, and she's really frustrated and upset that she hasn't been able to go to college, but about how she kind of takes hold of the situation and turns the year around and turns it into something. I think it sounds absolutely charming. I mean, you can see from the illustration on the front that this is going to be hopefully a really quaint and gorgeous book, and I'm really looking forward to reading it and then also to discussing it with Kate and a load of other kindred spirits in her book club later on in January. Next, another book I'm really excited about. I mean, obviously I'm really excited about all the books I got for Christmas, but I love that process when you share them on BookTube and it just makes you realise genuinely how excited you are for them all. This book is How Do You Live by Ganzaburo Yoshino. I mean, it looks pretty nice from this cover, but I just have to show you the cover underneath the cover. It's got one of the most beautiful, genuine hardbacks. This moon and the stars. It looks absolutely gorgeous, and this is a coming-of-age story about a young boy. I'm going to read you the blurb part of it actually, because I think I don't know very much about this, apart from the fact that it was Hayao Miyazaki's favourite book growing up, and he is coming out of retirement to make another Studio Ghibli film about this story. I really love Studio Ghibli films, and that in and of itself made me think that I wanted to get it and read it. Having read the blurb, I'm just even more excited for it. It sounds wonderful, and it sounds so up my street. So it says, the streets of Tokyo swarm below 15-year-old Copper as he gazes out into the city of his childhood. Struck by the thought of the infinite people whose lives play out alongside his own, he begins to wonder, how do you live? Considering life's biggest questions for the first time, Copper turns to his dear uncle for heartwarming wisdom. As the old man guides the boy on a journey of philosophical discovery, a timeless tale unfolds, offering a poignant reflection on what it means to be human. I mean, that just sounds like everything I want in a book. I spend a lot of time reflecting on this question of what does it mean to live? How do we live our lives well? I have so often been completely overwhelmed by that feeling in a big city when you see a crowd, and I just can't comprehend how every single person in that crowd has the same rich, meaningful, complete life experience as me. It just seems too much. It's like too much for my head and my heart to handle. And this just sounds absolutely fascinating and beautiful. Absolutely cannot wait. The next book which I received is All Creatures Great and Small by James Herriot. This is a memoir of a country vet living in rural Yorkshire. I believe there's a TV series which is really, really popular, really comforting, cozy, charming. I would also like to watch that. This is actually quite a long series of books, I hadn't realised. But yeah, this first one is lovely and thick. I really do enjoy a nice thick book. I heard a chapter from the second book on Kate Howe's channel again. She's definitely become a place from which I get numerous recommendations for the kind of books I'm going to really love. She did a really lovely Christmas series where she had readings of Christmas chapters from different books, and one from the second book of this was a reading from a chapter about Christmas time, and I just thought the writing and the style of it is exactly the kind of thing I really, really enjoy, and so I'm looking forward to reading these kind of cosy, warm, funny tales of life as a Yorkshire vet. Next up, I'm so excited to talk about this book. I haven't talked about this book very much, I think not at all on this channel, and I feel like now there's been a few videos in a row where I've mentioned it, so I don't know the order that they're going to come out in. This might be the first time you're hearing me rave about it, it might be the second or third time. This is The Skylarks War by Hilary McKay, and this is a book which I have read before and which I just really wanted to own a copy of for myself because I enjoyed it so much. I reread this last year and I read it for the first time maybe a couple of years before that. This is one of those modern middle grades which reads like a classic, and I love it for that. It's the story of a young girl called Clary, who grows up with her brother, with a father who doesn't particularly care about them, in London, and every summer they go to Cornwall and have these wonderful magical summers with their cousin in Cornwall, doing all of those kind of lovely Cornwall summer childhood book things, swimming in the sea and getting into scrapes and that sort of thing. But the story then follows the characters really right through their teenage years and their kind of coming of age phase. So it's got quite, oh, nearly dropped some books. It's got quite a wide arc narrative, which I really, really enjoy. I love seeing characters grow up. And it follows them through the First World War, particularly the experience of being on the home front during the First World War and the way in which they get a sense of what's going on out there without really getting that much of a sense. So Clary is, I think, around 14 or so during the war, and people are kind of hiding things from her. They're not necessarily telling her fully what's going on. She's trying her best to help, but she doesn't really understand the weight of the situation. And it explores so many fascinating issues, this book. It looks at boarding schools, at boys' experiences of being in boarding schools and how sort of traumatic they can be. It looks at, obviously, the effect of the war on people living at the home front, but also at how people were deliberately kind of protected from finding out what was happening and how that isn't necessarily beneficial. It looks at how girls weren't granted the right to an equal level of education, and Clary throughout all of this is just one of those heroines who sorry, my camera just died. Where was I? Clary throughout all of this is just one of those heroines who you love with all your heart. You know when you think of a character in a book and you love them equally as much as you love the most loved people in your real life? That is Clary for me. She is so human, but such a bright, warm, kind, caring, hard-working girl who makes the most of all of these awful situations and treats life as this blessed opportunity and cares deeply about others. And I just adore her. She is so good without feeling false or cheesy. And this book, although it deals with war, obviously, because it's a middle grade, I think it's not soul destroying. It's full of hope, it's full of beauty. Of course there are parts in it which are really, really sad, but overall it's an absolute delight. It's one of those books, when I did my reread of it, I felt sad during my reread that the fact I was rereading it meant that it would have to be a while until I reread it again, because I get to the end of it and I want to go straight back to the beginning. I think it's an amazing story and I highly, highly recommend, and I'm so happy to have a copy of it for my own. I've also just discovered that Hilary McKay has written a second book in the series, which is about the Second World War and follows the children of the characters in this book and their experience during the Second World War. I'm so excited to read it. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to read it. Like, I don't know whether I'm going to get it on Kindle because I can't wait, or listen to it on audiobook, or wait for it to come out in paperback so I can have a version that matches this edition. I don't know, but I'm excited for it, and I really hope that some of you go away and read The Skylarks War because it is just gorgeous. Then, penultimate book that I got. This is a bit of a curveball. This is The Island Child by Molly Aitken, and I don't really know anything about this. I just saw it on Instagram a couple of years ago, and I really liked the cover, and I really liked the title, and I bought it, or asked for it for Christmas, pretty much on that basis. As far as I can tell, it's a kind of mixture of folklore and reality and feminism set on a remote Scottish island. I generally really love northern climate, the sea, those kind of features in books, they're tropes which I really enjoy. From reading the blurb, I think this is maybe going to be a bit darker than I was anticipating, so I'm not really that sure what to expect from this. Like, I actually don't even know, is this something really mythological, which is based on Selkies, or is this like a very realistic book? I'm not sure, but I did like the cover, so we'll see what I think of it when I get around to it. And then the last book which I received is Laura Wood's newest book. Laura Wood is a young adult writer who I have just come to turn to as my comfort writer whenever I want that kind of book. She's like a modern day Eva Ibbotson. Last year I read 3 of her books, and normally when there's an author I like this, I try and just do one a year to sort of make them last, but I kept just wanting a Laura Wood, and so I read all 3 of the ones which I already had. And yeah, this is a Cinderella retelling. I love the Cinderella story. I love Laura Wood, so sounds very promising. And those are all the books which I received for Christmas. I am so excited to read them this year and to bring you along on the journey and tell you what I think of them. Do let me know if you received anything for Christmas which you're particularly excited about, or just in general if there's any books that you're really excited to get to this year. Thank you ever so much for watching, and I will see you very soon in another video. Bye bye.